Everyone eats out every day, but people don't think about how food arrives on the plate. This is Grounded, and I'm Lauren Mitchell. Join me as we delve deep into the challenges, expertise, and experiences of professionals and innovators in the food service industry. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge Produce Division. Our mission is to provide innovative solutions and excellent service to food service operators.
Hey listeners, it's Fresh from the Field, and I have our Chief Procurement Officer, Stephanie File, on to talk to us about some fun, fresh items that are focused on the fall. Thanks for coming on, Stephanie.
You're welcome. Hey, Lauren. Yeah, I love fall time. One great thing about the fall is apples. Usually in the summertime, we are always pulling apples from storage, so it's really great to see when we harvest them again. And not only do we harvest them, we get great varieties like Ponzi and Kiki, Jazz, Honeycrisp. There's a newer variety called Evercrisp, which is a Honeycrisp and a Fiji combination. So those are also great items to have during the fall and great items to put on your menu.
So for those that are wondering, apples I've heard are only harvested one time a year, but we know those that are in produce, that expands to be a little bit different by region. So explain that tidbit a little bit more and how some people who are eating apples in the summer are eating apples that not necessarily fresh compared to some summer fruits.
Yeah, well, we do pull. Apples are grown in Washington, Oregon, even Maryland, Georgia. They're grown in lots of different regions, and we pull from those regions seasonally. However, in the summer months, we do not have an area that we pull from in the United States, so they are stored apples. So it is great to see when they come back around in the fall, and that's also a great time where you'll see fall festivals and people in almost lots of different states having fall festivals and featuring apples.
Very cool. How about any other fall items?
Yeah, you've got hard squashes. Those are available a lot of times of the year, but there's really a great supply of them in the fall. Pomegranates, pumpkins are something that obviously come in the fall time, and I think they're overlooked a little bit because people typically think of them as just a Halloween thing, but you could do lots with a pumpkin on menus, and it's a great item and very readily available during the fall.
Very cool. And that's your Fresh from the Field update. Thanks again, Stephanie.
Thanks, Lauren. Bye.
All right, for today's show, we are traveling across the fresh produce supply chain to meet a producer of the ingredient. You may have heard terminology used in the industry like controlled environment agriculture, hydroponically or greenhouse grown, and particularly with leafy greens. This gentleman is well-versed on controlled environment agriculture. He's passionate about produce, his team, and customer satisfaction. He's our East Coast leafy green guy, co-founder and executive vice president at Little Leaf Farms, Tim Cunniff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, it's an honor. All right, so tell us, what are the responsibilities of a greenhouse producer? What is it that's involved in growing greens under glass day in, day out?
So if you take a look at the overall business, aside from designing and building a greenhouse, and that's the first part of it, picking your systems and everything like that. Once you have identified your systems and your structure as part of your business plan, then you start growing. And we identify ourselves as a grower, packer, shipper. We hyper focus in on the plants. And then the daily jobs of a grower, it's not just understanding, the biology and plant physiology, understanding what to do to maximize yield. But it's also they're running this very complicated series of systems, okay, that are there to maintain, water, fertilization, climate, light, as it relates to the outside atmosphere. We basically are a greenhouse. The lighting that we use is supplemental. The climate conditions we use are supplemental to outside. So what we're trying to use is the outside atmosphere. That's why we have the facility in McAdoo, which is a high elevation, low evening temperatures. We basically maximize, sunlight, climate outside with the inside systems that we put in place. The grower has to understand how to manage this between using all those systems, looking at the plant, seeing how the plant's reacting, and adjusting on a daily basis. So even though it seems like it's very automated and there's a lot of systems in place, um, it's this constant view of calibrations and understanding how things work. And then also understanding if something's not working. Hey, is there something wrong with the lights? Hey, is a fan not blowing strong enough? Hey, is there a water clog? So it's all of this stuff that comes together that allows a grower to really succeed and grow on a consistent, healthy plant, which basically results in yield and quality.
Wow. I mean, I think we can make a lot of parallels to business in general. So it's just making assessments based on shortcomings in your process and your ability to pivot and respond to those. Speaks to your strength. So that is fascinating. One thing that you said actually piqued my interest in as far as the elevation. Would you say that is there a specific location primarily that greenhouses can typically produce? Like, can one start one in Florida, Illinois, Michigan, or Pennsylvania? I mean, is the geography important?
It is. You can start with any place, and sort of like it's just a matter of what your business model is. You have to take a look at what you want to spend for energy costs, what you're going to be taking a look in terms of your water supply. Labor obviously is there. So the question is, it's like, what's your business plan? But just understand if you have to you want to see open up a greenhouse. I use like the lowlands of South Carolina, very hot, very humid, right? You can do it, but it's going to cost you a ton of money in terms of being able to cool, manage humidity, all of those things from a greenhouse standpoint. It's sort of like where my vertical friends, decide, okay, we're going to grow completely indoors. That might make a little bit more business sense. But from a greenhouse standpoint, what you want to do is it's the line to get into is supplemental, right? You want to go into a place where you're near geographic, decent sized market geographically. But when you're growing the lettuce, in our particular case, lettuce, you want to basically be able to smooth it out. The analogy that I use when I give tours at the greenhouse is best place to put a greenhouse is where you go for the summer and sleep with the windows open. Right? You don't need the air conditioning. And lettuce likes a 72-degree breeze. So if you can go someplace where there's a 72-degree breeze, or you can, tweak it a little bit by opening up the windows as opposed to running the air conditioning, you got a good place. Besides the sunlight and all that other stuff with automation. So yeah, you can build one any place, just how much money you want to spend running it.
All right. Now talk to us about the specific leafy greens that are growing there today. What are you guys focused on growing, and what was the decision that went into identifying those specific SKUs?
So when we started the business, we looked at the packaged salad category, and our goal was to transform the way that food's grown. So we wanted to go after the biggest segment, which was basically the bag salad business out of the Salinas Valley. Okay. That's basically controlled by really three big players. Okay. So from there, you're looking at products that would be similar to chopped icebergs, chopped romaines, those types of like the number one selling SKUs. Recognizing that our system, where we wanted to get into leafy greens, we had to find varieties that would sort of fit that bill, which we did. We found one. Well, we found the growing system over in Finland. They were growing a hybrid green that people really enjoyed. We went over there, saw it, tasted, it's really good. Not too much that you have to explain to the consumer. Like they eat it, it's a really good salad green. It's crunchy, it's sweet. It's got some romaine aspects to it, some iceberg aspects to it. But the consumer, when they got it on the plate, they're like, hey, this is good lettuce. By doing that, and then basically designing the greenhouses to maximize the genetics of that individual variety, got us to be the number one and number two selling SKU in the East Coast. And we've just been growing from there. But that was the initial vision of the company, was to go after and come up with a better value situation for the bag salad industry coming out of California. fresher, better taste at a good price. And that was basically the business plan.
Yeah. So for our listeners who aren't totally versed in lettuce, for an example, think about if you're a restaurant and you're located on the Northeast and you want to be able to provide fresh, crunchy, or sweet greens as part of your starter salad. And your greens are currently coming from Salinas half the year, or Yuma, which is in Arizona, and then trucked about 3,000 miles across the US. This is a solution to, first of all, support and freight savings, but also provide a local lettuce on menus 365 days of the year because it's regionally sourced. And not only regionally sourced, but from my perspective, I think it's harvested without ever touching human hands. Is that correct?
That's
Is there?
correct.
Okay. That's amazing. So again, local lettuce, the flavor you can imagine and the quality is boosted just because the sourcing is brought much closer to the radius of the restaurant, but also the techniques used to grow this product. I mean, they're capturing rainwater, natural sunlight, shining through glass, solar powered energy, soilless hydroponic farming. It's very incredible. So you talked a little bit about the different roles that go into this. You kind of need to be a scientist, mathematician, a grower, a planner, a designer. And you mentioned that you learned some of the techniques over in Finland. Talk to us about how it got started. I know that you specifically were started in tomatoes, but how was this idea born? How was the seed planted for Little Leaf Farms? And tell us back to the beginning how it started.
So I met our CEO and founder, Paul, when we started Backyard Farms tomato business up in Maine. I don't know, it was like about 16 years ago. So Paul was in for a little bit. I was there for about 9.5 years. Paul was always very interested, always very, very interested in the greenhouse industry. When we started the tomato business, he had a bigger vision. And basically to a little bit over a break, he came back around and was always looking. And it was all about, you take a look at greenhouses, but then it's like a labor situation. We discovered that with the tomato greenhouse in Maine. So Paul just had this almost a decade of just searching for different things, and all of the technologies were being developed. And we're very tied into Holland. Holland is where all the technology usually comes from a greenhouse standpoint, but they never really focused in on leafy greens. Some deep water agriculture for heads, but really nothing there. And Paul discovered that there was a company in Finland, based in Finland, that was doing sort of like these, adolescent baby greens on a mobile gutter system that was fairly automated. And, he was the first one to discover that. He invited me to come on board with the company to take a look at it. So in the very beginning, it was myself, our head grower, Peter Sloman, and our head of maintenance, Alfonso Garcia. And we all met together and like in this tiny little car driving up to this greenhouse in the Arctic Circle. And lo and behold, these Finnish engineers had started a mobile gutter system and they were growing these leafy greens that we brought to the United States. What we did though, when we brought it over, we were like, okay, they were surprised at how hard we were going to run. We took that system and we basically hot rodded it. We pushed the capabilities of that system, saw where there were things that we could better. I mean, I give a lot of credit to Alfonso and Peter for understanding what things we needed to fix and being able to focus on all those things and us deploying capital in the right areas to get ourselves more efficient, better plant health, higher yields. And that's basically how we started. We started with 2.5 acres. Didn't build the second 2.5 acres until we were cash flow positive, realized that we had a foundation of a business. And we've been pretty conservative in terms of our growth cycle by basically employing technologies, integrating them from the best producers in the world, challenging them with their ideas from what we found out, and then building the next ones. So now we're at the point where we have it dialed in and we're building 10-acre blocks that basically, produce more yield per square meter than any other lettuce greenhouse in the world. And now it's about scaling. And that's where the business currently is.
I always love to ask about the start of something amazing because I think there's important principles that can be drawn from that. And what you just said, best technology, you consulted the experts, even if that meant traveling far and wide, going to the source and starting small. So I thought that's just fantastic. Coming from a food service perspective, there's an element of needing to catch up to this, right? So you guys are definitely at the cutting edge. You're in the innovative side of fresh salad or bagged lettuce. Where do you think our industry needs to go in order to catch up, or at least be able to get to the point where more of this can be produced? Or do you think that's even an appropriate direction for it to go?
Oh, definitely. It's already going there, right? It's if you take a look at our food service business, I mean, we started out while we were trying to figure out all the different packaging and things, sort of like food service was we had the way that works, we have friends in the food service business who were, hey, can you help us with some lettuce? That's how it started. And there was an educational aspect of it. And thank God we had some people that were willing to help us out. But then it was like, okay, what does this business look like? And there's an educational aspect to it. Okay. With the food service industry, what we found out is that you're talking about generational thought process of what a California supply chain looks like, with pricing that has been fairly stagnant over, the last 10 to 15 years, with the exception of when there was major product disruptions. And as we all know, in the last 5 to 6 years, you can almost set your watch to major product disruptions coming out of the West Coast on lettuce. So that sort of like, identified a problem that people were looking to solve. Now, the gap is sort of like what a greenhouse industry or a controlled environment agricultural business looks like versus what the food service business plan looks like, where it's commodity bid, figuring out what the surety of supply is, multiple producers where you have a large base to pull from, where now all of a sudden you're talking about pretty confined group of guys, okay, that are servicing an area. Pricing is going to be a little bit different. And then changing sort of the narrative of what the value proposition is. So it's not just the lowest price of chopped iceberg. It's like, okay, higher quality lettuce, decent price. What's the value story to the end customer? And that's taking some time. So it's like over the last 5 years, we've slowly brought accounts on. The trend, if you take a look at it, it's growing, and it's a pretty steep curve, because what we find out is surety of supply, consistency and quality, and shelf life. From a food service industry, those are the three things that we deliver like significantly higher than our West Coast competition. It just takes a little bit of a while for somebody to get over, oh, I'm going to pay a little bit more. And then all of a sudden they get into their process and they realize that we've got studies on this, that you actually wind up making more money by paying a little more money up front, because you're not, your shrink is down, your turns are higher, et cetera, et cetera.
Tell me about your planting cycles or time periods. If someone's listening and they've got multiple locations up and down the East Coast and they want to drop this into their supply chain, how much time does your team need in advance to understand, to be able to support the lift, and also just general guidelines that you guys go off of to invest in or increase your acreage?
Right. So we invest in our acreage. I go out when I'm out on the road talking to customers. Like, we don't sell, we plan, and it's all about planning. So we understand, our forecasting accuracy is plus or minus 4%, on a given week. So wow. It's not so much about the production side of it, it's the demand side of it, trying to figure out how to plan for demand. So obviously earlier is better than later. What we found out is that we've got major distribution through the majority of national food service distributors, and it's for them is sort of like, what's their process? When do they have to get to their salespeople to talk to their end customers, or, however that supply chain works, to figure out what's the size that we need to plan for in terms of volume. So that's like a year out. As we're doing like a yearly plan, it takes us right now, we're on track to build about a greenhouse a year. It's 10 acres. And we're a year to a year and a half ahead pre-selling those greenhouses, while still, because the first part of it is to support the growth that we have from our existing customer base. And our existing customer base is growing 35 to 40% a year. So that continues to grow. So that needs to be addressed first while we're bringing new accounts in, and then realize that this is the cycle. During the spring and summer, it peaks. Okay. So what will happen is the crop gets a little bit faster. So we do get a little bit more lettuce. During the fall and the winter, it goes down. So the piece of advice that I have in terms of dealing with any CEA, okay, like, well, I'll just talk to greenhouses because that's the industry we're in. Sooner is better than later. You want to start in the spring and the summer. Don't start in the winter. You know, the last thing a guy is like, hey, we could start, and, give me 2 loads in January. And you're telling me that Christmas, that program's not going to get off the ground, right? But if you plan out during the year, we can get those loads during January and February, or when there's a disruption or there's a transition from humid to salinous, whether it's in the spring or the fall, and we can plan accordingly, because that's when it peaks.
All right. And tell me the greatest difference you feel someone would notice in eating a salad with Little Leaf Farm lettuce, or even any greenhouse grown lettuce, versus the alternative.
Crunch. People are amazed at the surprise of the snap of our lettuce. It breaks, it doesn't bend. And then there's also, like I said, it's delicious. People come back to us and they're like, it's really, really good lettuce. You'll see that we have, part of the way that we grow it, we've got, this curl in the back, because what we do is we cut it in 21, 22 days. So there's some iceberg in there where it wants to sort of ball up, but we cut it before it can ball up. But that gives it, helps it retain water, and it's got the sweetness to it. But people that know our lettuce, especially in markets where we're developed, like New England and parts of the Northeast, they know when they're in a restaurant, they can see the curl, they know it's us, right? So it's just the eating experience. And then, then also how long it lasts. Like, that's on the flip side of it, is that it holds like iron.
All right. So being a dreamer and an innovator, I hear your vision is 100 acres under glass by 2026. Can you talk to us about, what success would look like for you in the next 5 years and for Little Leaf Farms?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of lettuce, right? So having it all placed.
How can we get into more barbecue houses, right? That's
it's if somebody told us that, 6 years ago that we were going to have like the number 1 and number 2 SKU and like the 4th biggest brand, or the 4th biggest brand in the Northeast, and like we're the 6th biggest brand in the country, that's right now. And I still have to step back. I think, but it goes back to, we started the company to transform the way the food's grown, which we really strongly believe it's the right way to grow lettuce. The vision is to be able to supply, east of the Mississippi with East Coast consistent, sustainable product, right? With, less environmental impact, less emissions in the CO2, less truck miles, all those things that guys in the CEA business, we all have the same similar vision, trying to grow things better. And so that if we could have basically a series of these peri-urban sites, where we're basically supplying a large geography where 80% of the nation's country lives. Yeah, that's the vision, right?
What about commodities outside of lettuce? Do you guys currently grow anything else? I've actually walked a greenhouse with strawberries here in Minnesota, and it was incredible. It's astounding to me. It was like being in a spaceship. But are there other commodities that you guys are growing right now or looking to grow?
Yeah. Yes. It's pretty cool. It's like the way that we work with the seed companies. We've got a relationship with the largest seed companies in the world, and they give us genetics while they're developing them. So what'll happen is, they know what we sort of look at, and they understand our greenhouse and the talent level of our growers. So they'll give us stuff to try.
Cool.
And it's if you look to grow in the system, all the work that I mentioned at the very beginning that you have to run, right? It's sort of like, okay, you throw a seed in here, but This is what the growers and everybody else has to sort of like dial in on to make sure it's successful. We've got multiple varieties that are going, and we're getting constantly asked for the big ones. What's going on with spinach, or if there's various herbs or things like that. So we've got a list of people asking us to develop stuff while the seed companies are coming to us and giving us genetics. Sometimes, so this is the cool part of it. Somebody will ask us for a very specific X, and we'll come up with a pretty close Y. And then it starts, hey, and then you find out, you meet and you see it doesn't work. So we had it started with the green leaf. Nobody was asking for a crispy green leaf skew. It didn't exist before we started. Now everybody's got one, right? And we're at it. Did the same thing. We've got a butter variety. Same thing. It took off, and now we're telling the seed company, come on, you got to keep up with the seeds. So that's part of the planning process, but we're going to continue that. In terms of flowering fruit and stuff, that's, we've got enough on our plate in terms of, leafy greens, some herbs, things of that nature. But Lauren, the big thing is it's about scale. We want to make sure that we're growing things that can be delivered and feed the biggest level of population that's there. We're not looking to be a niche person. We're not going to be a super high-end microgreens company. This is about large scale commercial agriculture to transform the way that food is grown to the largest populations in the United States. That's our vision.
You know your niche. I love it. All right. So let's learn a little bit more about you. We've certainly learned a lot from you. Tell me something that you learned either prior to even tomatoes, early on in life that is strangely relevant to what you do today.
So I've been in the produce business 30 years, right? I started my first job coming out of college, aside from, bartending jobs and waiting on tables. I was selling pineapples for Dole. And Dole had a really good feeder program, hired a bunch of young kids, and started as an assistant district manager and learned from them. Very fortunate to have a lot of good bosses along the way. Just trying to pick up, different things from your best bosses, try not to do the bad things from some of your not so good bosses. And there's a couple of things. It's like, it starts with the product. I mean, really, it's all about the product. And everybody in the organization has to understand that we're only as good as the last case that we shipped. And it has to be day to day. It's that, one oops wipes out 10 attaboys, right? This business, it's daily execution. And the other thing is, like, when you have great product, people get it in the produce industry, people get inspired by it. It energizes you. I mean,
Absolutely.
you see a beautiful box of whatever, right? And people get pumped. So that's always got to be in your DNA and every day. And you got to make sure that everybody sees things with sort of like the same eyes, and people that are having a tough time seeing, you got to help them out. And people that aren't feeling it, you got to help them feel it. Because when you've got a collective experience coming out of the greenhouse, it just elevates everybody. So that's sort of like been a foundation of my career. It took over like really when we started Backyard Farms. I was very involved in sort of setting specs for the tomatoes and what we have to do. And it sort of like transferred on over to Little Leaf Farms as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So hearing you say it starts with the product and how you're only as good as the last case that was shipped, it's so that you can serve your customer, right? So that you can continue to have, and we haven't covered that. I'm curious, who would you define as, the ideal case, or who are currently the ideal case customers for Little Leaf Farms right now?
I don't want to say anybody, everybody, but it's the best customers we have are the ones that are willing to have conversations with us. It's not, anybody that's willing to take the time and just be open and transparent and honest. It doesn't matter, retail, food service, whoever. Say, okay, what do you need? Help us understand what we can do for you. We're confident in our lettuce growing capabilities, okay, and our service requirements. So let's just have a conversation about what you need, and how we can best service you.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. At the beginning of the year, we have clients that, we ask them, what does success mean to blankety blank for the year? And then we'll ask for specific targets. If they say, we want to infuse more local items into our supply chain, we'll say, okay, why don't we come up with a number that we can hit? Because here at Produce Alliance, that would be our job, is to go out and satisfy the sourcing to fill that KPI. So call it 5% locally sourced items within our supply chain, and they could start possibly regional, and thinking about Little Leaf and how to bring it directly into those restaurants to start, and that would hit that goal for the year. So very, very interesting.
That would be a good place to start, right? So science, Produce Alliance comes to us and it's like, say, hey guys, the people we talk to, what's your goal? What do you want to do? And they came back and gave us a number or something. We're like, okay, let's work together and figure out how we get there. And we can say yes or we can say no. But it's all about just like communication and conversation, and then being, really specific in terms of, we don't want to get out over our skis, right?
Mhm.
It's our on times and full scores. We live and die by them. We had a problem with it. The business grew faster than we could build greenhouses for the first couple of years. People all say it's a good problem to have. It's still a problem. And people don't care that, oh, congratulations, everybody wants your lettuce. They want to know, do you have my order filled? So now what we're doing is we're in a position where we're able to build these greenhouses to keep up with demand. And then when we have a conversation, we have enough history to say, okay, hey, listen, this is what's happened in the past. Don't be surprised if this what happens with your business. Let's take a look at it and plan, So the more history, the more data, the better planning we can get. Being able to build in hand, we've got more capacity. So it feels like we're running at a good rate right now.
All right. So going back to little Tim, have you always been on the East Coast? Were you
Yes.
born in the Pennsylvania area?
I was born in the beautiful state of New Jersey. But yeah, my produce career up and down the East Coast, spent time in Florida, Virginia. Is like one of the reasons that I'm so happy is that, we had the greenhouse in Maine, but my wife's originally from the area where just so happens this is where the greenhouse is. So I got my wife home after 28 years. So that's, check the box for me. But, I wanted to be on the grower end of it, from a produce supply standpoint. And there's not a lot of large scale year round East Coast produce jobs, right? I had opportunities working Salinas. I worked, border towns, things like that. If you want to be a produce guy in the East Coast, you work for an importer. I did that. And, or you work for like a wholesaler or something like that. But if you want to, like my passion was quality of product and consistency, right? Being part of that, the initial part of the process.
Mhm.
So to be able to have greenhouses in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and supply like a lot of customers, it's a dream come true.
I mean, I think you majored in marketing. You've got time in sales. You mentioned backyard farms. Any specific piece, if you could go back, you would retrain or focus more intentionally on that area as you see the value now from where you sit?
There's so much that I rely on. My dad gave me advice at a young age. He goes, be the fun guy around smart people, not the smart guy around fun people. And I am very fortunate to know a lot of very, very smart people. I have a good time, but it's, that's it. It's, I'm very fortunate that I think I landed someplace where I can contribute to an organization that sort of fits my skill set. There's a lot of things I struggle with. But like I said, smart people around me, and just a great team. I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate about the people that like everybody in the organization, but it's some of the best team. It's one of the best teams I've ever been involved with. And even the young people coming up and they're embracing each other and they're embracing the company. So yeah. And yeah, is there a lot more that I wish I knew about? Absolutely. Do I have time to go back and think about it? No.
I also hear you killer dance moves. Is this true? Are you a good dancer?
I thought I was a good dancer.
I think I read about it on the internet.
I I enjoy the dance. I don't know if I would say I got killer dance moves. I think I would say this. I think I surprise when I'm at a party or something like that. I think when people look at me, I surprise them that they see that I got a little rhythm because I don't look like a rhythm type of guy. I mean, I'm great, a little punchy. I shouldn't move as good as I do on the dance floor.
All right, we'll go for a couple rapid fire questions as we wrap up here. First of all, here on the podcast Grounded, we love to hear from our guests. Just what simple daily ritual keeps you grounded?
So the one thing we do as an organization, we have a 7:55 stand up every morning. So it's 5 minutes to 8 and it's for 5 minutes. Okay. Everybody gets on the horn, senior leadership, what you doing today? And it's just like, hey, and then have a good day and everything like that. So that 7:55 gets me set up in the morning to make sure that I've got my to-do list ready. It's that thing that gets, I gotta be ready for the 7:55 and just helps me organize it and writing stuff down. I mean, the to-do list thing is, if I don't write down the to-do list, I could just like flummox through the day, So writing stuff down to 7:55. Those are the two big things.
The 7:55. I love it. I remember when I used to work at a distributor, we would all meet, the warehouse selectors, the night shift would come off, the sales reps for the day would all meet in the office and just talk about, inventory levels, major orders for clients that day. But just from a whole warehouse perspective, it was really cool to have boots on the ground all together prior to heading out for the day.
Well, you don't want to have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, but I think that I always say the cadence of the business. Everybody's got to understand what the cadence of the business is. And how you do that is by making sure that you've got, stakes in the ground during the course of the day. So you have the 7:55, we have the 7:30 production meeting in Pennsylvania. That only takes 15 minutes. Then you have a 7:55. Then I have an 8:05 with the sales team. And then it's the same agenda, boom, boom, boom. But we come into those meetings sort of like you come in light, smiling, good morning, you try to keep it what's going on. And then it's the same thing. Any problems, any issues, OTIF, on times in full, any production issues we need to know. And then also just sort of like, hey, it's going to be a big day. Hey, it's going to be a big week. Hey, it's a soft week, but, but you can get it all done. We start early in the morning, but you can get that all off the deck by quarter.
All right. I'm failing at our rapid fire because I took way too long on question 1. So here we go for true rapid.
Right.
How about to the next generation of procurement or supply chain? What is your best secret that you're willing to share?
Visit the supplier. Make the time to visit supplier. Learn. You'll be a much better buyer.
Who has been a mentor for you and in what way?
So I was a staffer at the Brothers for Better Health Foundation, young, and I got to be just a young staffer and saw Bob Carey, who was one of the first presidents of the PMA, and then his successor, Brian Silverman, who were both geniuses, but personable, just very, very smart, good men. And, what I learned from them was being nice members, being kind. And I tell everybody in my organization, be nice. I did this thing for PMA. I was a thought leader. I was like one of 4 guys. And they were like, okay, what's the advice that you got to give? Yeah. I met a bunch of Produce Alliance people there. And they're like, okay, what's your words of wisdom? I'm just a knucklehead, right? I said, be kind. Be kind. It works.
I heard you actually just got up and danced.
I don't know about that.
I'm just kidding. I love it. Be kind.
There's a couple of drinks, but that was
Okay. And then finally, this has been a fun question. What is the staple produce item you have on a burger? Can't live without.
lettuce.
No, but you can't even say that. You got to say what kind of specific green. Are you going to go butter, green leaf?
No, I go with my green leaf. Yeah, no, it's like our green leaf. I like crunch. I don't like a soft lettuce. So I like crunch, for the lettuce topping on a burger. So I'm pretty like the burger. It's pretty standard for me. It's lettuce, tomato. I do fried onions, not raw onions. That's it.
All right. So for those listening that have listened to this conversation and learned a little bit more about greenhouse, they've certainly been encouraged to go and hopefully tour one nearby. But specifically, if you're on the East Coast and you want to learn more about Little Leaf Farms and understanding how they can get to your back door, Tim, where can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. The best thing to do is, if you have interest, hit us on this email address. It's sales@littleleaffarms.com. That goes to me and the entire team. We all look at it, and that's the best thing to do. Look us up we've got a YouTube channel, littleleaffarms.com. You can see the greenhouse and very cool videos of everything. Like us, we've got a group. You can hear everything that's going on with us. Our social media is pretty strong. And yeah, it's my LinkedIn account is Tim Cunniff. You'll find me there. But like for people that hear this and you want an immediate thing, it is up at sales@littleleaffarms.com. We'll get back to you immediately.
Awesome. Tim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And figure out where to go dancing someplace. Dancing.
And to our audience, if you've learned something today or laughed, please share this podcast with someone else, specifically those who might have a particular interest in controlled environment, ag, and greenhouse grown product. Again, Tim, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much. Have a great week and good luck with everything. Huh?
All right. This has been another exciting episode of Grounded. See you next time. And that wraps up another episode. We have covered a lot of ground today. Thank you for joining. For show notes and our most updated market report, visit us at groundedthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge Produce Division. Our mission is to provide innovative solutions and excellent service to food service operators by leveraging technology, talent, and an insatiable appetite to improve.